We'll step away from basketball just for a moment, but this is important for Big 12 fans because one of Brett Yormark's real hallmark ideas since taking over for the league that has been discussed ad nauseum is decoupling basketball and making more money off of basketball rights by selling those separately from the football media rights. And there's a major college sports voice who has provided now some actual data and numbers to back up a case for why Brett Yormark is right that this can be something that generates a lot of extra money for the Big 12, even though it has been met with some level of skepticism from a lot of people the whole time this has been happening. Now, Yormark, and I'm pulling these quotes all from an article that was written by Jon Wilner. He got the quotes, I think, from Yormark's appearance at the Final Four. But he's not been shy about continuing to be very bullish on basketball. He went through and kind of did the generic, I'll say coach speak answers. I realize he's a commissioner, but coach speak answers about expansion and the state of the sport and all that. But he did not do that with basketball. He made sure to really get into it. He said, I understand what football means in this landscape, and it's at the center for sure, but basketball matters. I said it when I got here, and I'll continue to double down. So he's doubling down on it. All right. Quote, basketball is undervalued in this ecosystem. Yormark, a former exec with the Nets, explained to CBS. And right now, it's providing an incredible lift for our profile and narrative, and it will continue to do so in the future. He's right, and it damn near, Texas Tech and Houston, damn near really elevated that narrative. Had one of them been able to prevent Florida from winning the national championship, but I digress. We've already done that show. Anyway, Wilner goes on to say the ecosystem of which Yormark speaks typically assigns to basketball 20 cents on the dollar spent on college sports media rights, with football getting the rest. Okay, so the point he's making there is like typically if you're talking about a media rights deal, 80 cents on the dollar of all the money that's given there is spent on football media rights, and basketball gets about 20 cents there. Okay. But Yormark, Wilner says, seemingly looks at the numbers and envisions a different formula entirely, with basketball worth substantially more than 20 cents. And he also says that doesn't mean that it's going to up. So if you say basketball is worth 40 cents, Yormark's idea is not, okay, well, now it becomes 40 cents on the dollar is basketball and 60 cents is football. He's saying 40 cents for basketball, still 80 for football. So now we've got 120 cents. We've got something cooking here. We've got some extra money generated. That is the idea. He said instead he sees the intrinsic value of Big 12 football and basketball content as eventually exceeding $1 in the media marketplace, with the latter having greater upside due to its current valuation. His goal, position the conference to tap into that unrealized potential by the time 2030 arrives. 2030 important because that's when the media rights deal will be up. It's also when a lot of change is expected in college athletics. So you want to be ready to roll there. You want to be ready to roll with your basketball at full throat. So here's the data. Okay. Here's what Jon Wilner points out. There are a lot of things here, a lot of things that are a little more obvious and then some less obvious that I think are great that Wilner dug up. He points out an obvious fact that we have talked a lot about here. 3 of the last 5 national championship games have featured a Big 12 team. 2 of those were won by Big 12 schools in Baylor and Kansas. Houston makes 3 of 5. And if you go back a couple of years, 4 of the last 6 tournaments, a Big 12 team has played for the national championship if we include Texas Tech. The conference earned 2.9 NCAA units per participant in the 2025 tournament, its highest total of the decade and the best of any power conference this season. And that means more money. So those units, you get a unit for each round that you're playing in the NCAA tournament, and they're each worth $2.1 million. So that's more money for the Big 12 earned. And again, showing that the Big 12 basically performed better on a team-by-team, pound-for-pound basis than anybody else in the tournament. That is probably the best way to put that. The Big 12 performed better on a pound-for-pound basis than anybody in the NCAA tournament this year. Florida's victory over Houston in the national title game, he points out, drew 18.1 million viewers on CBS, the highest total since 2019. All right, so that's good, 18.1 million viewers. Overall, the 2025 tournament averaged 10.2 million viewers across CBS, TBS, TNT, and True TV, which represents a 3% year-over-year increase. So he's saying basketball is growing in popularity. The numbers are going up. Even as we complained about this tournament not having as much fun, basically, not as many upsets, saying, hey, the media numbers are still going up here. The tournament, people still love it. They can't turn it off. That's only getting more valuable. Then this is where it really, I think, starts to get good in terms of the research that Wilner has done here. Said he sees, he being Yormark, sees basketball's value rising markedly as streaming platforms acquire more content and grab a larger share of the audience. While college football attracts massive viewership, more than 5 million viewers glued to a single broadcast, basketball is different. It's a tonnage sport. And tonnage, especially quality tonnage, will increase in significance as streaming grows. So tonnage being just like you have more of it, not just this one-off game on Saturday that's going to draw a ton of viewers, but you'll have, throughout the conference per team, 2 games per week, which adds up to a lot more extra inventory that's out there. And if you're consistently generating higher numbers with that will really add up over time in terms of the viewership that you're producing across a season. And the more it goes to streaming, that becomes important because you need to sell, for instance, like ESPN Plus subscriptions if you are ESPN. And the way you can do that, if you've got a bunch of games that are happening every week, more so than just this big one-off that you can kind of package, there's a different level of value, a different sort of value there in that. Pointed out by Wilner, according to data through the 23-24 season shared by a sports media research company, college basketball fans are 144% more likely than the general population to subscribe to ESPN Plus, which that makes a ton of sense, right? You have to do that basically to watch college basketball because of the tonnage, because of how many games are there, whereas college football fans are merely 41% more likely. That's a crazy stat. So football fans, there may be your team, for instance, right? If you're a Baylor fan, your team may play 1 or 2 football games a year on ESPN Plus, probably like 2 right now, right? It's typically been like 1 conference game. Anyway, maybe 2 or 3. You could get by is the point for a whole season without doing that. Basketball, I mean, you're playing like half the games on ESPN Plus. So you're going to be pushed more there to get the subscription for basketball season because there's just so much more sheer inventory that's on there as opposed to the football game. And so there comes some of the value for what it is that a good basketball product can do. Additionally, he says college basketball fans have higher affinity levels across all major sports than college football fans and are, for example, 1.8 times more likely than the general population to be fans of Major League Baseball. Why do you ask? Does that matter? Major League Baseball is just saying that's significant because if you have cross-sport affinity, like fans that like multiple sports, that means, again, you're much more likely to stay within your subscription for an entire year. So college basketball fans seem to be a valuable audience for pushing streaming subscriptions because they will say, well, Big 12 basketball, I have to have this subscription because so many games are on there. And you know what? I'll just keep it because I got to watch baseball and there's a lot of baseball on there. Better chance of keeping the person hooked and staying on there for longer, which means more money in their pocket. So like that's good stuff, man. I mean, this is the type of thing I would imagine is being talked about by consultants behind the scenes when they're discussing how all this is going to work. And some of this, honestly, is a little bit like what was being talked about with the Pac-12 and the Apple deal that was apparently there, or maybe not, or whatever. But the Apple deal, which would have been more based on moving towards a streaming model and what's that going to look like in the future, and how do you best try to game the system for yourself with that. Now, the difference here is that the Big 12 does have a really good, strong linear deal, and you're thinking about, all right, like an extra piece of that, where the Pac-12 did not have that security net. But it makes sense to be looking at streaming and how you can best utilize that, milk as much money as you can out of that for your conference, especially when you're the Big 12 and you don't have the massive, massive multi-billion-dollar media deals that like the Big 10, at least the Big 10. Big 10 got over $1 billion, right? Big 10 and the SEC. So anyway, good stuff there from Jon Wilner. I appreciate him. I think you all should be following him. on Twitter, and the Wilner hotline is a great place to get info. That's where all of that comes from.